The Rockpile Report, the pettiest, hardest drinking Bills podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the AFC's Roundup podcast. I'm your host, Bills season ticket holder Drew Gear. That's my producer, Chris Kruger. Ryan Lasel from Rock Sports Network is in studio with us tonight as we're talking about free agency. And we are here looking at the AFC East and how the opening days of free agency is gone. And it's been interesting because the AFC East, every team is trying to knock off Buffalo, and every team is trying to figure out where do we position ourselves to be more successful than we were last year, because ultimately every team failed. Every team here fell short of what their stated mission was for the season. And in some cases were more catastrophic than others. And speaking of which, we bring in Christian Simonelli. Christian, I love that you are now the leadoff, because we used to have to craft an intro to just punch down on the Jets. And then we did it for like 4 years. And it got old. And now it's you guys. And I'm not going to lie, I'll never feel bad about punching down about the New England Patriots.
Yeah, hey, we're the punching bags. Punch away.
Well, here's the thing. You want to talk about bags? How about that bag of milk, Mac Jones?
Basically what he was traded for. So,
here's a question. How is it received? Because you've been on this show long enough with us. You've regaled us with all the talk about how there was the Belichick believers, and then there was the people who were like, no, Mac is fine. Mac's going to be great. Watching how this all unfolded with Mac Jones, how has that left the fan base?
Honestly, last year was so bad. The reaction Monday and basically was, is Zappy next? Like, they didn't even mention Mac because it was a foregone conclusion that he was going to be gone. And it was like, all right, Zappy's next, right? Like, Mac's gone, so it's got to be Zappy. And before you could even think, they turned around and signed Jacoby Brissett, which because he was here for a year and played with Tom Brady, you would think they signed Kirk Cousins.
They talked about it like it was. A home run. They go, oh my God, we got Jacoby Brissett back, guys. The same Jacoby Brissett who led the Colts, I believe it was, into Buffalo in a blizzard game in Week 7, 2017, and lost in overtime as we made the playoffs. Yeah,
I mean, I like Jacoby Brissett. I think he's a fine, backup. The prevailing wisdom here is that he's here to type of guy that'll mentor the incoming kid, whoever that may be, and that he's not going to be the type of guy that's going to want to cause a stink, and that he'll be a mentor more than anything, and that he'll essentially keep the seat warm for the guy that they draft.
So that was going to be my question. Does this move signal the fact that they're literally clearing space for the kid that they're going to draft?
Everybody pretty much thinks that. I mean, everybody pretty much thinks it's going to be Jaden Daniels or Drake May, and everybody around here wants Jaden Daniels. Very few people want Drake May. And maybe they'll get their wish. The rumor out of Washington is that they like May and that Daniels will slip to 3. I'm still kind of worried about where that wild card team is going to come from that might trade up. You remember, years ago when San Francisco traded up to 3 with Miami and they moved all those picks. Where's that type of team? Don't know. Is it a team maybe like Denver that might do that?
It's also the fact that Chicago may find a buyer for Justin Fields, in which case they seem like a team that like the brain trust there liked the idea of an athletic quarterback. Well, you're not going to find a more athletic quarterback in this class than Jaden Daniels. And also he's proven he can throw for thousands of yards. Prolific passer in the right offense. I just feel like if I were to look at Caleb Williams and all his red flags and look at Jaden Daniels is a safer pick. And so in that way, you're right. It's a dangerous strategy, but it's a strategy. They're going, look, we're tipping our hand early. And there is to your point, the team that might trade up, you guys just sent off a flare going, we're a quarterback needy team now. And so any team that was going to try to trade maybe thinking, well, if we could get to 4 or if we could get to 5, maybe we're in striking distance of a quarterback. Well, now we know emphatically that the Patriots are on the quarterback hunt. We know the only place we have to get to is one. So what does that cost? How desperate are we? That's it. It's definitely a thing to watch in the run up to the draft. I'm interested to see how you guys navigate this and who you end up with, because Caleb, like I said, what are your feelings on Caleb Williams? Just cliff notes.
Look, last year at this time, he's, well, let's go back to the beginning of the college season. He's the clear number one pick. He's the clear number one quarterback. You go through the season, he's got the issues, the stories coming out of there with his teammates not necessarily liking him. The whole thing with him running into the stands, crying in his mother's arms, the comment that he just wanted to go home and, quote, watch his programs. He sounded like an 85-year-old, elderly person. Those things kind of stick with me. So, but again, you got to keep in mind, like, this is a young kid, not exactly mature, but is he the type of guy that you're going to want to build your franchise around? And right now, a lot of people think no. A lot of people are kind of scared of him, and I'm kind of in that boat.
He's a real-life Bo Callahan.
That's what I was going to say, Bo Callahan from Draft Day.
Right.
It's like, wait, what's happening?
He's a real-life Bo Callahan.
What's happening?
Right.
Why didn't anyone go to his birthday party?
So, look, from a talent perspective, he's got all the tools. Like, I'm a sucker for the talent. Give me the talented guy. I'll figure out the rest. I will. Like, I'll have confidence in my coaches and in my program that I'll be able to, have the right pieces in place to steer him in the right direction and have the right people around him. When you have that ability, I'm a total sucker and a total, whore for the talent. Give me the talented guy.
You're the kind of guy that gets a lot of people fired.
Pretty much
in the NFL.
Give me the talent and I'll figure out the
those alpha males that are like, I'll fix him. I can fix him.
Just give me this guy and we can make it work. And a lot of guys we talked about Caleb Williams and how it's like the Death Star is last week, Paul Wineski. The NFL is the Death Star. And NFL quarterbacks are all of those X-Wings trying to close in on it. And most of them will blow up before they even come close.
Yep.
Before they ever find NFL success, they'll just burn up. And that's the end of it. And the problem is if you have red flags now, that's an issue. Where you're talking about things like maybe your head's not in the right place. You're already talking about what you think you deserve. Partial ownership. Things like that. Like, that's wild. I hope you're not in that bucket just because I like you. It would be funny for the Patriots franchise, but I like you, so I don't want to see that happen to you. Now, in terms of the rest of your free agency, you guys had the most money to spend. I expected to see like this, like really aggressive, we need to rebuild this team, because that's usually the mistake most, especially first-time GMs. They go, I've got a war chest of money to spend. I've got a boatload of needs. Let's go out here and plug all these holes and be as effective as possible, as quickly as possible. I'm shocked that the Patriots haven't really taken that track. Like, you guys signed some contracts. You signed Michael Onwenu, which is a huge deal for you guys. I mean, retaining him, I don't think it's hyperbole to say it was the most important thing you guys did here in free agency. Whatever else you do, that was the most important one. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with you there. They have an offensive line right now that's an absolute mess. They don't have any tackles. They needed this guy. They needed this anchor. And he's by far their best lineman. I know you can throw David Andrews in there at center, but he's, getting a little bit older, and, Onwenu has the ability to play guard, tackle. He can play, all the four other spots, basically. Yep. So, definitely the best signing. When Mayo was first introduced as head coach and he said, we got money to burn, I was like, great, they got money to burn. And then a couple of weeks back, he said, well, I may have caught a little bit ahead of myself there. I was like, yeah, they're not.
Yeah, because the new GM, Elliot Wolf, pulled him aside and was like, you shut up. We do not have money to burn.
Well, like I said last week, Robert Kraft will see you in his office.
Robert Kraft wants to talk to you, and Robert Kraft goes, "Stop telling people these things," because you know how old men complain. They don't yell; they just go, "Come on."
They just sound tired.
He's like, "Stop telling people these things. Don't say this. We're gonna be fine. It's just we gotta work around some things." So they are, but you see it. Okafor, not a world beater at tackle, but he's something better than what you guys ended last year with. You're rebuilding this. You re-sign Uche to a deal that I think he deserves, a 1-year, $3 million contract. I mean, now shame on that regime for drafting him where they drafted him.
Right.
But you're giving him an opportunity at a cost that's right-sized for the franchise, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there was reportedly another deal out there that he turned down, a 2-year, $11 million deal that was also incentive laden for some other team. But this is a 1-year deal that's, I think it's valued up to $8 million, incentive laden. Also signed Anthony Jennings, who's been really good in the run game for them and has been a solid edge presence. So yeah, I mean, keeping Bourne and Henry too. Those are good team guys here. They're not world beaters. They're not upper echelon guys.
Well, let's
the fact that you had to sign Hunter Henry because you didn't have any tight ends, so I'm glad they kept him. But they're good players.
Can we talk about this, though? The idea that this is a team that so badly needs a rebuild at the skill positions. Like, Ramondre Stevenson can't be your whole answer to your skill stable. He can't be the best player on your offense. So even if you draft a rookie quarterback with the first pick, you have to go into the second round going, okay, so wide receivers, like, that tree is very quickly being picked clean. You're going to have to backstop this with some proven talent. Tyquan Thornton, nobody knows whether he's good or not, right?
No idea. Yeah.
You've got Devontae Parker, who everyone has seen what his ceiling is with two different teams.
Well, he's gone.
He's gone.
Oh,
Parker
good.
went to Philly.
Yeah.
Good. Awesome. Yeah. So you got rid of that. But then you brought back Kendrick Bourne, who, I mean, maybe with a fresh coach and because he got in Belichick's doghouse and then got kind of shelved a little bit.
Jalen Reagor.
You've got guys who were supposed to be things other places, and you brought them here.
Austin Hooper. Don't forget Austin Hooper, big free agent signing.
No, it's easy to forget him. Yeah.
You're trying.
I really like, to that point though, I really like the Antonio Gibson signing. I've been a big Antonio Gibson fan for the last
That
few
is
years.
A great signing. And this is what
they haven't had a third down back. I mean, they for years they had Kevin Falk and Shane Vereen and James White. They haven't had a third down back on this team in 2 years. So they needed a pass catcher.
Antonio Gibson, I mean, he got a very raw deal in Washington, I think, the last couple of seasons.
Well, yeah.
He's had some fumble issues in the past, which, if you have that, certain coaches are just not going to give you a second chance. And he found himself on the wrong side of Riverboat Ron a couple times because of a fumble, an untimely fumble, and then you wouldn't see him for like games after that. Yeah. And I think that's a raw deal for a guy like that because he's electric when he gets the ball in his hands.
Belichick was the same way.
Oh, yeah. It's a good thing Belichick isn't here because he would have been in the exact same situation.
And Gibson can return kicks, which takes Ramondre Stevenson off the field during your kick return, which is kind of a big deal for starting running back, too.
It's a good thing for you. So you guys have made these incremental moves that are actually very smart. And I guess that's what I want to ask you as we kind of close this thing out. Watching all these incremental moves that have improved your football team in ways that, like Ryan just laid out, these are schematic. A lot of these are like this. This shows that there's an idea there's thoughts towards planning what our offense might look like. Planning, trying to build layers of competitiveness in this football team instead of saying, well, I'll just draft the best guys and throw them all out there and we'll make it work, which is what it felt like you guys have been trying to do for the last couple of years. Does the fan base have a better feeling about where all this is headed, seeing a more conservative but more intelligent approach to free agency?
Yeah, because of what happened in 2021. Everybody got so excited that year, and rightfully so. They spent out, they doled out the most guaranteed money I think that a team ever did in a free agency period, and it worked for a year. It gave you a bump for a year to go 10-7, coming off a 7-9 campaign, go 10-7 with a rookie quarterback. And at the end of the day, you ended up with maybe 3 players out of the dozen that you signed that year.
Well, you also ended up just getting massacred on national TV in one of the most. It was the perfect game. It's the only perfect game in NFL playoff history.
Right. I mean, it just totally get waxed, and in the wild card round in Buffalo. And I think people here, after the 2 decades of success, are willing to be patient a couple years, not like 3 or 4. But, wait a year or 2 and, slowly rebuild this team so that we can start to have competitive Sundays again and talk about playoffs positioning and be in the mix and have a young core. We don't have a young core. So I think the majority of us are willing to wait, to wait and to do that.
You want to be in the hunt
but
after week 7.
You got to trust your scouting, and you got to hit, and you got to hope that this new grading system that they have, that they completely overhauled the drafting system and the grading system of players is going to lead them to, a franchise quarterback. I mean, and that's the most important thing that they can do. And a draft that is very deep at the wide receiver position, that you get 1 or 2 guys out of the draft. At a bare minimum, you need 1, ideally 2.
Yep. No, 100%. It's going to be interesting to see how New England rebuilds from the ashes of this. If it's done correctly, it shouldn't take long. The NFL is specifically built to take teams from the gutter and make them competitive quickly. That's why the draft system, it's why the compensatory pick system, it's all of this is geared to making teams that aren't competitive now competitive as quickly as possible, because that's what puts dollars in the NFL's pocket, having as many competitive teams as possible. So if you're in the gutter for too long, it's because of malfeasance. And it sounds like the new brain trust has gotten a decent start to proving that they're at least, even they're like a little bit of a conservative approach, they're still able to accomplish things that makes your team better. I'm excited for you guys, just not too excited, because I wish you guys luck, but not that much luck. Christian, I love you. Where can people follow you on social media?
Hey, love you guys. Thanks for having me on, as always, at Chris with the TIAN on X. Give me a follow, and I'll give you a follow back.
And so we pivot from that, Ryan, to talking about the New York Jets. And Chris, I don't think it's an overstatement to say that if like the Jets had a rough week. I think rough. I mean, if you want to count it back, you're talking about a team that knew it had a lot of work to do in free agency, a team that knew that it had some certain cap constraints to work around and a lot of other things, and then a team that also found out that their most important player might be, I don't know, maybe running for public office somewhere. Guys, if there was a soundtrack for this week for the New York Jets fans, it would sound a lot like this. Here to talk to us about it is Play Like a Jet, Scott Mason. Scott, first of all, are you getting ready to salute? Like how does that work? Like, if he becomes the VP elect while he's still under contract, like what happens here?
I was joking on Twitter that the Jets are going to be a team with a quarterback who is running for vice president and a wide receiver who is dating a Kardashian. TMZ is going to be all over this team, and they'll probably do a better job covering it than much of the sports media, to be perfectly honest.
So the early foray of free agency, it always seems like Ryan, doesn't it always seem to be the thing where the Jets are always in the headlines for things, and it's like 1 out of 5 that it's going to be positive.
Yeah.
Like, that just seems like you have to be kind of frustrated with what's going on with the team this week. Aren't you, Scott?
Yeah, although what happened today probably mellowed me out a little bit. I think a big concern was that the Jets weren't going to be able to fill most of their needs in free agency. They were being too passive, and I think to an extent they are. I don't see them really involved in Calvin Ridley and guys like that. I'd like to hear more about them trying to be proactive about getting a star receiver, especially since they have no second-round pick in the draft. But I will say, like, John Simpson, we'll see. He had 1 year as a starter in Baltimore, showed some upside. There were some ups and downs, but he's probably an improvement over Laken Tomlinson, who was terrible. And then they got Morgan Moses back today as we record this. They swapped 4th-round picks, and I think they traded a 6th-round comp pick. And so Morgan Moses is 33 years old, and he's not going to be a long-term solution there, but he's very durable. He's a solid player, and he'll give them a reliable right tackle that they haven't had really since, well, Moses was here the first time.
I was about to say.
Look, that was the thing. They shouldn't have let him go, but look, at the price of swapping a 4th and giving up a 6th-round comp, that's not a terrible price to pay to admit a mistake, I suppose. So if you look at Moses being the starting right tackle and now Simpson coming in and playing left guard, and you have Elijah Vera Tucker coming back and you've got Joe Tippmann at center, on paper, now we know obviously injuries happen, especially with Elijah Vera Tucker. On paper, you've got 4 starters right now, and then the Jets have the 10th pick in the draft, where you'd assume they'll go and draft another starter on the offensive line. We'll see what else happens. I mean, obviously, David Bakhtiari is looming. He's a guy that they might sign, but even if they do, there's no guarantees he plays because he's had 5 surgeries in the last 4 years.
Anybody signing Bakhtiari is doing so, like, it would. You know what it would need to be, in all honesty, Scott? The team signing David Bakhtiari has to be a team that already has a de facto starting left tackle, or at least has a guy that they drafted in the last year or two who they genuinely believe could be starting with a little more polish, in which case you have a very high floor security blanket in the event that David Bakhtiari's knees can't hold up, because history shows he can't. And
for sure.
And so with that in mind, that's the scenario I see him fitting in. Otherwise, I don't know what NFL team should be putting their eggs in that basket.
Well, you know the deal, Drew. If the Jets sign him, we all know why. It's that simple.
Well, yeah, because it's the Blues Brothers thing. They're getting the guys. If we just
the band back together,
if we just put the band back together, like who else can we bring in here from? Like who were some of the Packers' good wide receivers when Brett Favre was there? Can we go get them
go
too?
Get AJ Dillon,
Donald Driver. Let's go get Donald Driver off his couch. See if
Greg Jennings.
Greg Jennings.
Get AJ Dillon as their running back too. Yeah, I mean, listen, it's been a weird free agency so far. I mean, they filled out some depth on the other side. Quentin Jefferson and Al Woods are probably gone. Maybe Solomon Thomas as well. Javon Kinlaw, I think they paid a little too much money. It's weird. He's been kind of a sizable bust so far. In a strange way, he's sort of like Solomon Thomas in that he played for Saleh. Saleh sees something in him, and he massively underperformed his draft slot, so they'll bring him in here, and hopefully they can. He started to take some strides as a pass rusher last year, so maybe Saleh saw something. Lecky Fatu is a good run stuffer, which they really needed. He'll take Al Woods' spot. Woods was good at that, and then obviously he got hurt. And the other move was Tyrod Taylor, your old friend. The issue with him is health. He seems to get hurt all the time, but when he's healthy, he's a very capable backup. We know that. He's not a guy that you want as your starter, but if he's a bridge guy for a few games, or if he has to hold down the fort when your actual starter gets hurt, that's fine. The thing now is going to be the Jets are going to probably have to have a backup to the backup because of the injuries that you see with Tyrod Taylor.
Well, but the thing with Tyrod Taylor, when you say the injuries, how many of those are his fault? It's nobody. First of all, I do think it's comical that Tyrod Taylor has now officially had the whole New York experience. Like, yeah. He's played for every team in the tri-state area. It's pretty cool. So then you look at this and you say, this is a guy who left Buffalo, and I believe his next stop was
L.A., right? He went to the Chargers?
I don't think right after.
No, it was the Browns first.
No, it was the Browns
first.
And he
right.
had the job. And then he gets hurt, and Baker Mayfield steps in that game that he brought them from behind and won. And then that was the end. He never played again for them. So there it is. So he goes to the Browns, goes to the Chargers, and it's literally a pain injection gone wrong and punctures his lung. And he's just finished.
Yep.
Then he goes to the Texans. I don't even think he saw the field with the Texans.
No, I don't think so. No.
And then the Giants last year, where all of a sudden he's in Buffalo, or 2 years ago, where he's in Buffalo on Monday night. No, that was this past year, wasn't it?
Yeah. 6 games with the Texans.
That's where I almost threw you out of the car.
Yeah. He had 6 games with the Texans, 2-4.
Wow. See, that's how little the Texans mattered at that point. You blanked that.
Oh yeah, because that would have been the Deshaun Watson missed year. That was 2021. Was the Deshaun Watson missed year. He was brought in.
It ended up being Davis Mills.
Yeah.
For most of the year.
And the funny thing about Tyrod Taylor is he's not bad. In fact, I'd be willing to bet he's still the same quarterback he was then. He can hit a deep ball once in a while if it's wide open. And at the same time, you can't ask him to run any sort of West Coast offense. You can't ask him to do. He's probably not the most mobile at this point in his career, at least not like he once was. So he's a guy who can go in there the same way Kyle Allen could go in there.
He's the new Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, he's the guy who can come in, and I can come in and play at a level where I'm not going to be the absolute reason you lose this game.
If Tyrod Taylor,
I'm not going to win it, but I'll be the reason that you don't I won't be the reason you lose.
If Tyrod Taylor is playing for 4 or 5 games, you can probably be okay. If he's playing for the whole season, it's not good. But ultimately, look, that's what the Jets needed, right? Because last year, Rodgers went down, and they got caught with their pants down, essentially. They had said all along that Zach Wilson wasn't supposed to play. He was going to learn under Rodgers, and they did nothing to get an actual backup to sit behind Rodgers in case something happened. So Wilson, who they claimed wasn't supposed to play, got shoved in there. And he was still their best option because then they got Trevor Siemian and they already had Tim Boyle. And listen, they had a situation where the quarterback, look, was Wilson the reason they were losing? No, but he certainly wasn't elevating anything or helping them at all or facilitating anything. The other two guys, Siemian was pretty bad, but Tim Boyle was just beyond brutal. And so you just needed a guy that, like, if something happens to Rodgers, look, if he's out for the year, I don't think anything is going to save the team.
No.
But if he goes down for a few games and Tyrod Taylor has to play, especially if it's against some teams that are beatable, look what happened with the Giants, right? Last year, they won 2 games. One of them was against an Eagles team that was resting most of their starters. The other was against a bad Washington team. But I think it's not unreasonable to believe that Tyrod Taylor could get you what he got the Giants last year, which is a 2-2 split in games that he started and finished under the right circumstances, and that's something the Jets didn't have.
Is he your most important signing so far to the early portion of free agency?
Well, I guess it depends.
Moses is probably the most important, but is Tyrod Taylor number 2?
Moses was a trade. He's probably the most
okay.
important acquisition.
Simpson,
I guess, would be... Because the other two guys, Fatu's good, and he'll help a weakness. Their run stopping wasn't all that good last year, and Fatu should help a lot with that. But I think everybody sort of knows that the defense is good enough to be a top 10 defense, even if their run defense isn't great. The main thing is elevating that offense, and the strategy can't be... Because, look, Connor Hughes had reported this for SNY, and I sincerely hope this is not what Joe Douglas thinks, but we'll find out. He said, Joe Douglas basically thinks that if Aaron Rodgers is healthy and the Jets hit on some studs in the draft and some of the young guys that they picked the last few years step up, then the Jets will be really good. And it's like, okay, but you're leaving yourself zero margin for error there because there's a million ifs and buts in that scenario.
Well, so this kind of... What?
Calvin Ridley to the Titans.
Yeah, so, these things are... This is what I love about this time of year. Things are just going to roll in tonight.
Yes.
Chris, have you figured out how to get the ticker on the TV for later?
No.
No, we'll sort that out. Here's the thing. What you just said is kind of the final thought I want to wrap this segment with. When I look at the Jets, because you're talking about having zero room for error, and this is a GM who we all know is kind of on the hot seat, and we even talked about last week how it would be interesting to see if they are operating under like an internal cap, where it's the thing where the owner's looking at the GM saying, I'm not going to allow you to botch this for years to come in your pursuit of something that saves your job now, because if it fails, I won't be able to hire a quality GM candidate to fix the mess that you leave behind, so I'm not going to let you create one. One of the things, you're talking about the ideas of Joe Douglas and what he thinks is good enough to be a highly competitive football team. I'm noticing this thing where I'm looking at the free agent market and I'm looking at all of the players who were set to leave the Jets. All of the Jets currently unrestricted free agents who are on the market. Right now, there are only a few of them that have been signed. And it's like Jordan Whitehead, which, like, that's a head scratcher, I guess. Like, didn't he come from Tampa and then went to the Jets and then now he's going back to Tampa? Bryce Huff, obviously that's the big one. Mm-hmm. And then after that, it's like there's no traction at all on anybody who was on your roster. You've got names like Carl Lawson, Laken Tomlinson, Dwayne Brown, Quentin Jefferson, a guy that I'm a fan of. He's out there. all of these names of these players who are leaving your roster, and there's no land rush to scoop up any of them except for 2. And in fact, the one of them is just going back to the team that he knew on what seems like a fair contract for someone who could start at safety in the NFL. So realistically, one guy on the entire roster was prioritized as you hit this, even though you have almost 20 players who are eligible for free agency. It almost speaks to the fact that what got built here, as these pieces are now becoming available to the public isn't hot to trot on acquiring them, which tells you, look, I used to think about this in terms of the Bills draft classes back during the drought, when I always questioned, why are we so bad? And then I would look at it and go, well, where do these guys go after we cut them or don't re-sign them after the rookie contracts are up? And the answer was, in a lot of cases, nowhere.
Right.
Or they'd go somewhere and sign like a prove-it deal and fail and never be heard from again. And so in that way, while a lot of these guys still maybe have NFL utility, I think what you're seeing is that Joe Douglas built something here, and as these pieces start to fall away, the NFL is looking at those pieces going, I wouldn't have done that, and I still don't want to do it, even though it's cheap. Do you think that should alarm Jets fans?
I think if you looked at the free agents they had, there were a couple of guys you might want to see back, and we'll see. Ashton Davis may very well be back. He actually played his best football last year and finally started to show some of the promise that everybody had been hoping for, so maybe he comes back. Everybody wanted Huff back, but the amount of money he got, everybody sort of understood that it was probably not going to happen because the Jets needed to use their resources on the offensive side of the ball, and obviously they committed a lot of resources draft-wise to the pass rush position the last 2 years with Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald. So they're hoping that those two guys can really hold it down, and then maybe they can find another guy to occupy the other part of the rotation. Beyond that, Jordan White, all right, I'm going to say this, and he's very active on Twitter and gets annoying, so if somebody posts this, whatever, but Jordan Whitehead's bad. I'm sorry, he's not good. And I know that everybody will talk about X amount of tackles, and he had the 3 interceptions against the Bills. I mean, I thought it was
stinks
funny
on ice.
Yeah, he's terrible. I thought it was funny because I don't know if you saw this recently, but somebody tried to make it go viral with Sauce, and they were like, oh, he's never – I think I sent this to you. It was really funny. It was like, he's never been beaten in man coverage in 2 years. And then they're like, oh, yeah, what's this? And it was what's his name? Shakir from the Bills getting a touchdown with Sauce trailing him. And Cole Beasley, of all people, jumped in on Twitter and goes, dude, that's zone, not man. And if you go back and look at the play, Sauce was covering Cook on a wheel route. Jordan Whitehead basically lost his man.
Just lost it.
Sauce tried to come over, and at the last second, he was a split second too late, but he almost made a great play and bailed Whitehead out. So I just thought it's funny because stuff like that is the norm with him. He's very bad, and he takes terrible angles on tackles. Like, he's not good. And our friend Joe Blewett always jokes about this. Like, Whitehead will find criticism of him and tweet it out and be like, what do you mean? I'm a Pro Bowler. Robert Saleh said so, but he's bad. So I don't care that he's gone. And a lot of the rest of those guys, look, I would have liked to have seen Quentin Jefferson back, but he is going to be coming off an injury.
The idea isn't so much the guys you want back, but I'm just talking about how the NFL isn't rushing to try to acquire these guys. Like, that just tells you where the floor actually was for this team.
Well,
and unfortunately, they didn't
tells,
step it up to, yeah.
It also tells you that most of the best players on that defense are already still here, right?
Yeah, no, and that's it. No, but that's it. And so that's why it's like you hope that this guy has an actual plan this time to plug these holes, because the pieces you lost, nobody's tripping over themselves for, but you were a team that the defense wasn't good enough to carry the offense. And the offensive pieces you lost, you're like, okay, well, those linemen probably aren't very good. I really wish they weren't on my team to begin with. So hopefully we have a better plan this time around. And I'll tell you what, as far as all the social media stuff, like a guy like Jordan Whitehead going, oh, I'm a Pro Bowler, my coach says so. That's like me going, hey guys, I've got a sweet podcast. You know who tells us that, Chris? Our mothers.
Yeah.
Also you.
Chris's mom is very complimentary of our efforts here.
Yeah.
Scott, we love you. We appreciate you making time in your schedule for us. Where can we find you on social, and where can everybody follow your work?
Chris's mom is right. Chris's mom is like Judy Bagwell. She's always got Chris's back, and she's probably even willing to do a Mrs. Kruger on a pole match, just like that's what happened with Judy Bagwell.
Oh my God. Is that a real
that,
thing?
Chris, I'm sure that Judy
We have to
Bagwell,
Google this when this segment's over.
Yeah, it was one of the to this day, it's largely considered one of the stupidest things that's ever happened in the history of pro wrestling. But that's how much Chris's mom cares about the podcast. She'd be willing to participate in one of those matches. By the way, Buff Bagwell this past week was the subject of Dark Side of the Ring. So if you want to check that out, I'm sure that I haven't seen it yet, but I'm sure that Judy Bagwell stuff is mentioned. Real quick, just because you guys will get a kick out of this. If you haven't heard this story, Bagwell basically burned his bridge in WWE forever when he was on a short run there. He wasn't going to make some dates, probably because he was drunk or high or whatever. He actually had his mom call the office and talk to Jim Ross and tell him, Marcus isn't going to be making the tour this weekend. And Jim Ross was like, yep. As soon as that happened, we were like, this is done. The guy's mommy is calling me. No, I'm sorry. That's not how this works. Awesome. So anyway, unlike Buff Bagwell, you can catch me directly without going through my mom by listening to the podcast on all podcatcher apps. I'm on Twitter at PlayLikeAJet1. We've also got PlayLikeAJet.com. We've got the Play Like a Jet YouTube channel. We're doing 7 days a week still. This week, it's daily updates after each day of free agency with Walter Cherepinski, my buddy who runs WalterFootball.com. He's got real-time grades going on at WalterFootball.com. He gave the Morgan Moses trade an A for the Jets and a C for the Ravens, so that was nice. But if you want to see what Walter thinks about each signing or trade as they happen, that's there. But obviously all the Play Like a Jet stuff is going on. And guys, really appreciate getting a chance to come on and talk about the Jets with people that see things from a different perspective, because obviously when you're inside that Jets bubble, it's different. You're dealing with people that are only looking at things one way. To see it from the outside is good. And I always enjoy chopping it up with you guys. So appreciate it and looking forward to more of this throughout the offseason, my friend.
And so as we pivot from a team who has a bunch of free agents nobody wanted to the team that lost more free agents faster than anybody else in the division, we switch to the Miami Dolphins, who just had a run on pretty much, like, Alf, your cupboard got raided pretty early in the free agency process, didn't it?
Oh, my God. And I even got to get a few tweets off. Like, I think my banger of the week so far was my tweet on Monday where I put in quotation, Dolphin fans, Chris Greer can't draft. And then I put in quotations, the NFL wants every single draft pick Chris Greer has ever made.
Every player you're drafting is hitting free agency. I mean, look at this.
And getting rich.
Well, that's it.
I think the count is at $274 million in signings for former Dolphins so far this offseason.
That's almost as much as the total amount that's been spent on wide receivers around the entire NFL.
Yeah.
That's insanity.
Yeah, and it's everybody. Like, I remember I was talking, everybody's like, hey, do you think we could get Brandon Jones back? Because he's like a pretty nice third safety. And I'm thinking, yeah, what the hell can he cost? Evidently, he cost $21 million for 3 years.
Guys, free agency's wild. And I love the fact that your fan base, I get to watch it in real time. You guys experience what it is to be like, well, we were good. And now everybody wants all the shit we had. Oh no. And your fan base is freaking out. Before we started recording, you were talking about Robert Hunt. Please expand on that for our listeners.
Well, yeah, he's a fan favorite. First of all, he's a great player. Okay. And for a while there, I kind of feel vindicated because for a while there, I was considered the Robert Hunt truther. And I kept telling people, this guy is really, really, really good. He's really, really, really good. Nah, you're overrating your own player. Okay. $100 million, $20 million a year, $65 million guaranteed. Yeah. Evidently somebody thought he was pretty good, huh? But Dolphins tried to keep him, and they made him an offer in October for about $10 million a year on a long-term deal. Long-term, I guess you could put two and two together. I guess $50 million for 5 years, something like that. Maybe $22 million guaranteed. That's, roughly what they offered. He got double that.
I mean, that's insanity.
So evidently he has a very good agent to have. Because look, I don't know if you know Robert Hunt's upbringing. He grew up dirt poor. And he was a second-round draft pick back when second-round draft picks got peanuts. I think he's earned a total of $4 million in his career.
So
once
right
you pay
now
your
he's
taxes and you buy a house and you buy a car, you're not living, the lifestyles of the rich and famous. So Dolphins threw $50 million at him, and he said, "No, that's nice. I'll wait a few months."
I'll wait a few months. Look at the generational wealth this guy got by waiting a few months. Mm-hmm. Just a few months. And that's what's wild about this time of year. Like, I'm looking at it right now. You look at the guards that have currently signed. Robert Hunt, $100 million. He's making $10 million less than the combination of the next two guys behind him combined.
And one of those also went to Carolina. So Carolina has spent $150 million in a day on the guard position.
It's almost like they've recognized, hey, our quarterback is short and he's not the most mobile guy like we thought he was going to be. We need to do something here. Protect the A-gap, for the love of God.
Yeah, Carolina's going to be the greatest 7-10 team of all time.
All the wide receivers, all the offensive linemen. I've seen this movie before. In fact, I've seen this movie before in Miami. So have you. And we all know how this ends. So when we take a look at the early goings of free agency, which loss do you think hurts the most that the Dolphins sustained out of all the guys that left if you're looking just at the 2024 season?
Well, Christian Wilkins we expected, and then we were getting some scuttlebutt throughout the season, and I posted on OnlyFins, our Discord, very early on, look, brace for the fact that you're going to lose the two big guys, Wilkins and Hunt, because I think it's extremely likely you will. But so the one that hurt was Andrew Van Ginkel, because they seem to have a framework to bring him back. There's some word that he took whatever was offered and decided to shop it, and Miami then rescinded the offer, which is kind of a cold way to do things. But when you have fluid cap space like Miami has, because I don't know if you're paying attention to their cap space, they haven't dug into the piggyback yet. Tyreek Hill is waiting to have his deal done. Bradley Chubb is waiting to have his deal done. All they did was use Ramsey's extra money and a few cuts, namely Xavier Howard, to start becoming cap compliant and create the space they need for the guys that they signed the last 2 days. So Yeah, and if you could tell on NFL Network, Andrew Van Ginkel signed, and it was like a 1-2 punch. The Dolphins announced Shaq Barrett immediately. And the Shaq Barrett deal is actually a pretty good one. We got a little bit of insight on that because it says it's 1 year up to $9 million. Mm-hmm. I think the base is at 3, and for him to reach 9, he's going to have a season.
So that's what I was going to ask, because we say it all the time. I don't care who signed who. And if you tell me, because we got to see behind the scenes when the Bills signed Von Miller. Von Miller did a whole thing for his YouTube channel about inside my free agency thing. And in there, there's a lot of fluff because it's whoever, this is a self-aggrandization piece. That's all that thing was. But what you got to see was a guy going through the machinations of being a free agent and talking to different GMs, talking to other players. But what I found was interesting was that part of him and his agent's conversation about how his deal with the Bills was going to look on TV. And the guy was trying to tell him, listen, on the ticker when it goes across ESPN, what people are going to see is this number. And he was like, all right, good. That makes me happy. That almost means more to a guy like Shaq Barrett, like a Von Miller, a guy who's already been paid. They already got their monster contract at one point in their career. They've already made their money. They just want to be like, hey, I'm still on a team. I'm still going to go out there and compete, but I want to put my best foot forward publicly so I can go out there and go, yeah, see, I signed a $9 million deal, guys. The actual structure of it is what's important because $9 million, what does it mean? What does it mean?
Yeah,
is it incentives they might never reach?
Like Jimmy Butler down here was eligible for the max contract, which was up to $49.7 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
But he ended up getting 50.1. And when they asked the Heat, how come he got an extra $300,000 to get over 50.1? And the Heat basically said $50 million sounds better on TV.
And that's it. $50 million. Yeah. This is how we're going to do it. So when you take a look at the acquisitions, which one is your favorite? Now I know you're a big Jordan Brooks guy.
Yeah.
Explain a little bit about what you think they've done at the linebacker level here, just to try to change up, because you guys had linebackers. You had linebackers last year. Jerome Baker wasn't terrible, and you had some what you thought was depth. You bring in Duke Riley, then he gets in the doghouse, but then it also turns out he's not very good. What are they doing to fix that, and how does Jordan Brooks play into that?
Well, they got, first of all, they signed Anthony Walker Jr., who's a pretty good fill linebacker, and he's going to be in that rotation. He's going to be the third guy, I would say, and he's going to be a special teams guy as well, which is something that they need. He wore the C and he was the green dot guy for, I believe they were the number one defense in the NFL last year. So he has some skill, but he's a two down linebacker. Yeah. Not much versatility there. Jordan Brooks I absolutely love because he could play as a fill linebacker. He could play as a scrape linebacker. And I think he was underutilized as a pass rusher as well because he has an incredibly high pass rush win rate, kind of like Jerome Baker. They tried to have Jerome Baker take a pay cut and Jerome Baker said no. And then they said, bye.
Well, yeah, you can only spend what you have.
Yeah. So they decided to get as this. They essentially took Jerome Baker's money and handed it to Jordan Brooks. But my favorite signing of them all, although I really like everything that they've done, I really like Aaron Brewer. Aaron Brewer's tape is top notch. But I know what you were goading me for. Jordan Poyer as the third safety on a defense where Anthony Weaver already said we're going to have three safeties on the field more often than most teams. Yeah, I like that. Now they're shopping for they're trying to bring back Deshaun Elliott, and word on the street is that we're bidding against another team, which is a problem for us because we're not flush with funds here.
Well,
but yeah, they need to get that other guy, and then once they get that other guy, whoever it may be, there's a few guys I love Quandre Diggs. I don't know how expensive he's going to be.
The safety market's a fun one because there's so many veterans out there with experience but who still have talent. Like in a single offseason, the safety market became what the running back market used to be. And it's just funny though because we're sitting here talking about Jordan Poyer. You and I sent you that tweet earlier today. Like I'm pretty sure they cut Xavier Howard because they knew they wanted Jordan Poyer, and he keeps liking all of Rachel Bush's Instagram photos.
Yeah,
and putting like flame emojis under him. He's like, "All right, get that man away from my wife. We're not doing this."
Yeah, that was an odd moment for this offseason. Xavier Howard Look, he's going in the Ring of Honor. He's one of my favorite Dolphins. He was a fabulous player for us for every single year he was here. But good God, he averaged 2 sex scandals in offseason. Nothing criminal.
Nobody.
But Jesus, it's always a stripper here, a baby mama there. Always something going on sexually in the offseason. That guy really likes sex.
And that's what I mean. And then he's coming for Rachel Bush too. He's just like, God, come on. Yeah,
like calm down, X.
Calm down. X gonna give it to you.
Yeah.
Jesus. All right. Here's what I'll say about Jordan Poyer. I think there's a lot of Bills fans who are angry about him going there because it feels like a betrayal of sorts. And the thing I try to remind everybody is, first of all, I stop caring about a guy the second he takes my jersey off. I have no emotions tied to this. That the relationship between fan and player is essentially you do the thing that I like, and if you do it well, I'll clap. And if you do it poorly, I'll boo. And I have those rights.
I think Tyreek Hill had the best tweet of the week, really, when Robert Hunt wrote this glowing goodbye and thank you to Miami, the organization, the fans, and everything. And Tyreek Hill is right under there saying, "You're dead to me."
You're dead to me. Well, that's it. Like, it's that idea of like, all right, man, you're out of here. Good to know you. Best of luck to you, but not that much luck. And so we spent 15 minutes in our show a week or two ago talking about the idea that even if Poyer was willing to stay here on a reduced contract, for what our defense requires a safety to do, he's not a fit. There's not a role there. And so for a team that has cap problems, has to get younger, has to start drafting more defensive backs to try to fill this, or finding the same way we found Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, going out and finding these underrated players who our pro scouting department says that guy fits the mold for what we want. That guy doesn't, we can get him at mid-level or cheaper contracts and then groom them to be the starters we want them to be. The time's come to turn it over here in Buffalo. So for everybody who goes, oh my God, how could he sign there? They signed him for $2 million. It's not like he didn't have people beating down his door to bring him in. The Dolphins brought him in because he probably fits something your defensive coordinator says, hey, I saw him play a lot of dime in Buffalo. Like all of a sudden, hey, dime looks, this works. And we know that in the box, he can do a certain thing, but don't ask him to play a deep half or a deep quarter. We'll let him do this. And he's good at this still. He still has the foot speed. He still has the instincts. I just think that fans are making too much of this on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah. He's fine. He's fine.
I would say so.
He's fine. He gives you the versatility where he can be a third safety on the field, so you don't have to have a third linebacker if you need it.
Yeah.
And that's, he's going to drop into the box. He's going to make a tackle, maybe, but he's playing with the instincts of a 25-year-old and the body of a 33-year-old, and that got him in a lot of trouble last year.
Well, did you ever see the photo of him? He's in a beater, and he's doing an interview online. And people were like, what the hell happened to his shoulders? They look like Lego pieces. And everyone's like, so, our friend Dr. Kyle Trimble from bangedupbills.com, he goes, that right there is what multiple AC joint separations looks like over time. Now, you played, you understand, like, sometimes, like, you can fix that once or twice, but over time, you keep doing it. So the question is, he's got a lot of wear and tear on him, visible wear and tear, but he's a warrior. He's going to be a player for you guys if you can put him in the right role. I'm happy that he was able to plug that hole for you guys. Before we end the segment, given the market dynamics and some of the stupid money that's getting thrown at some positions, and the fact that at some positions, nobody's like the safety market's still kind of standing still. The edge market kind of slowed down there for a little bit. Like there's certain things that aren't moving as quickly as we thought they would. Are there any positions that you're thinking, hey, this might not be someplace we can play and it's a position in need?
Yeah, I think, look, I'm not too worried about guard because we have draft picks and it's a spectacular draft for the offensive line. So you could fill a need there. And they have 4 other adequate guys that they could shuffle in and out to play left guard. Plus they're working on a couple of guys, as backups right now. But, I think they need a big zero. I think they need a zero tech. They need a nose tackle for the type of defense they want to play. Cause as of right now, they have a second-year player in Brandon Peely, and I don't think that's enough. So I would expect that. That's the move. And I don't think it's going to be something big. I think NFL Network reported today that DJ Reader is not on their radar. I think DJ Reader's taking visits with the Lions and another NFC team, but not Miami. So it's not nothing big, but they need a guy to just play those 15 snaps a game. Big 350-pound guy to just essentially, like I always say, gain a yard down. That's what we need you to do for 15 snaps a game, and that'd be just fine.
Alf, we always love your insights. I love getting to talk about this stuff with you, about the Dolphins specifically, because you're one of those who, I like the fact that you drive some of our fans crazy because they go, oh my God, he's one of the most arrogant fans I've ever heard talk about their team. I go, guys, you do realize we're just as bad. You do realize that like our fan base is the same way. If there's anybody in a Dolphins jersey I would prefer to talk to about this stuff, it's you. Because at least,
and I gotta say something for the rest of the AFC East. What's going on in New York is some of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. I saw a tweet, and I'm not going to steal it because I'm not that type of person. So I'm telling you, it was written by somebody else. I did not write this, okay? Before anybody says I stole a tweet. But I saw a tweet that says, if RFK Jr. wins the presidency, does that mean that Zach Wilson is third in line to the presidency? I thought to myself, it takes a certain type of genius to write something like that and put it on the internet. You know what I mean?
It's always, we were joking about this with Scott Mason. The Jets are constantly in the news, and it's like 1 out of 5 chance that it's something good.
Yeah, there's something always going. By the way, I will say something. That was a nice pickup, John Simpson. Okay,
all right.
That was a really nice. That was a really nice free agent signing for the Jets. So they got themselves a really good offensive lineman.
For once.
Too bad that their quarterback's going to be running the country. You know.
He'll be off trying to make public policy, you know. Hey, maybe psychedelics will finally become legal. Who knows?
And by the way, I have on our Discord forum on OnlyFans, we have a guy who's a former TV executive, and he says that there's an FCC ruling that says, for example, let's say Aaron Rodgers does in fact ascend to the vice presidency, right? The NFL will be forced to not put Jet games on primetime because it's a violation of FCC rules to have a public official on paid TV.
That's hilarious.
Okay. Can you imagine if this happens? We might have to campaign for RFK now.
Alf, I love you.
I need this to happen.
Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you on social and where they can find your OnlyFans?
If you want to listen to our podcast, God knows why you would want to. If you want to listen to our podcast, you go to 3 yards per carry anywhere you get your podcasts. And of course, you want to become a member of our Discord. It's discord.gg/OnlyFans. You can become a member there for $3 a month.
So Ryan, with that, we've just heard from 3 different individuals talking about the different teams across the AFC East, all having their own individual experiences with free agency. And so I guess the question is, we've already done a show this week where we talked about just the free agent market, about our thoughts about what the Bills have done so far. I guess I question, how does what we've done stack up with the rest of the AFC East? And realistically, I guess, like, is this weird in the sense that there's no... We always used to get together and make fun of the Dolphins for winning the offseason. It was always a conversation about what?
We started it.
We started it?
Yeah.
When?
What do you mean when? We had Rex Ryan.
Yeah.
We won the offseason. Yeah.
Literally said it, didn't
Shut up, fatty.
And then, hey, off the bus starters.
Yes.
That'll be a Doug Whaley quote that haunts people with a long enough memory forever. But I feel like the Dolphins, for even years before that, were the team that was always trying to buy the offseason. It was, hey, look at all these high-priced free agents we spent money on. Obviously, that's the reason we're going to win the AFC East. And then the New England Patriots would just barnstorm again to another consecutive division title. There is no team, when you look across the 4 teams, who I think you can honestly say, quote unquote, did the best, because I don't think either team really did anything significant. Was that fair?
Yeah, I'd say so.
I mean, what do you think about, like, if I just want to look at this and I want to say, okay, the Dolphins, they gained some players. They also hemorrhaged a lot of players.
Yeah.
Now, maybe those players were seen as not being a fit. Maybe they were viewed as expendable because they felt that there was better, cheaper, whatever you want to call it, out there on the market or in the draft. But again, that's the draft, and that's touchy. It's much harder to execute. I almost, pro scouting has to be a sweetheart gig compared to college scouting, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So with that in mind, then you've got teams like the Jets where it's like, okay, so you got some guards and some offensive, you got a guard and offensive lineman, and a defensive lineman, and it seems like things might, like, it almost seems like you improved marginally, but the glaring holes that you had didn't get fixed. You don't have any extra offensive playmakers. You can't say, oh, our rushing attack is fixed because we rebuilt our offensive line. You can't say that. So where are you now? Like, then if you're the Patriots, you're the team with the most to spend, and you didn't really move the needle much.
Yeah, it's looking at the AFC East, you've got like 4 teams in 4 very distinct situations, right? So you've got New England with all kinds of cap money, but nobody wants to go there because who would want to go to New England, right?
Think about it. When they had Bill Belichick still, they were getting turned down by free agents left and right.
Yeah. And they didn't fix anything, right? I mean, because, a new head coach doesn't all of a sudden make you a desirable destination, especially one who's never coached anywhere other than New England or played anywhere other than New England.
You can't plug a rookie head coach and expect him to have gravitas.
Without like, what's going to happen at quarterback, right?
Yes.
Like, we've got a high draft pick, but who's going to be there for us to pick? Then you've got Miami, who went for it, and now they're trying to figure out, we've got to sign Tua, we got to figure out what we're going to do with Waddle. Like, Jalen Ramsey's aging. Tyreek Hill has said that multiple times that he's going to be done after another year or so. Like, so they went for it last year and didn't hit, so now they've got a plan for not this year, but next year, when they've got to do something about their quarterback and something about Waddle. Then you've got the Jets, who went for it last year, but now they've got a problem in Aaron Rodgers, who has a huge contract. They've got all these players that left, but they still need a lot, right? Like you heard them talk about, they need another wide receiver. They need, some help on the defensive side of the football. And then you've got Buffalo, who has the quarterback on the big contract, but also is the youngest offense in the NFL. And defensively has lost some players, but they've lost players at positions that their head coach has been able to fill in the past and find talent in other places. But they don't really have a lot of cap space, but they still have some levers that they can pull to create some cap space. So you would argue that despite there not being an overwhelming signing in the division, if you gave all 4 of those teams the option, everybody would rather be Buffalo. Because at the end of the day, you've got Josh Allen.
Well, you have the most important piece.
And you still have money and levers to pull to go get those need positions. And I would argue that Buffalo has the fewest needs of the division.
100%. And then you look at the guys that they were able to retain.
Yeah.
And you look at what they lost and you say to yourself, okay, Mitch Morse, due $11 million. He gets cut and he signs immediately with Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. For a 2-year, $5 million a year deal. Now, I firmly believe they probably offered him a pay cut.
Sure.
And he and his agent decided that if he's going to keep playing, it's better to test the market and see if you can't get more for your bang for your buck. I would be shocked if...
He did. It's called no state tax.
I would be shocked to hear that the Bills offered him less than 5.
Yeah, that seems like that Morse deal seems like a pride move more so for Morse, because it feels like Buffalo went to him and said, "Listen, we need you to take a pay cut. Von's getting ready to take a pay cut. Like, this is how we need you to do things.
Knox is going to take a pay cut."
He said, "I'm going to go out to the market and test my market," and he had like one team that wanted him, and that was Jacksonville with the deal they gave him. And he's like, "Well, I'm not going to go back to the Bills now after the way that went down."
Well, and after it's been interesting hearing, like, getting to see behind the curtain and knowing a little bit about with as transparent as the team and the franchise and people have been about how the Bills negotiate. And it's funny when you hear, we were just talking about Jordan Poyer, and his cousin took to social media after his release and was complaining about the Bills. And so obviously that tweet gets a lot of traction and starts being shared and proliferated around the fan base on social media. And one of the things I find interesting about that is this concept that you rarely hear sour grapes. And when you do, it's usually in scenarios like this. Quentin Spain demanding his release. Why? Because they were going to bench you.
Yeah.
Now, whether you think it's fair or not, fine, but where is Quentin Spain right now? Mm-hmm. Does anyone know? our GM does a really good job of just bridging it as, I have a price. I'm willing to tell you what my price is. That price isn't negotiable, but it's what we think is fair. And maybe there is wiggle room there, but he's like, this is my number. If you can meet it, great. If not, there's no hard feelings. Mm-hmm. That's how we lost Jordan Phillips the first time. They went to him and said, here's our number. And Arizona said, no, you're worth $12 million a year. And he said, okay, then you're a $12 million a year player and I can't meet you.
Right.
Shaq Lawson, they offered him 9. He took 10 from Miami. How did that end up? Mm-hmm. He got traded to Houston, then played for the Jets, and then ended up back in Buffalo.
And then realized what other teams were like and was like, maybe Buffalo's not that bad of a place. Kind of like Mitch Trubisky did last season.
What I love is that he got to play in that Jets game where we just throttled the Jets, like at home, and it was a thing of like, oh no, they got one of those. Well, I don't want to be here then. Yeah. Wait, they got. It's like when you show up. Now you're a basketball aficionado.
Yeah,
you've reffed it, you've coached it, you've played it at a high level. It's that thing that I like would happen to like every Section 6 basketball team in high school when you're like, yeah, man, we're awesome. And then you show up and during the layup, like the warm-up drills, you look over and the other team has 3 guys with beards who are 6'3", 6'5", and you're going, wait a minute, what?
Yeah.
I'm 16. I'm not doing this. Oh, hell no. And then they go, well, do you want to join this team? Absolutely.
Yep.
We, unfortunately, because of the quarterback we have, no matter what these other teams do, until they figure that piece out, until they solidify offensive lines, like the Jets have proven it. Having a stellar defense doesn't do much for you if your offense is scoring 10 points and losing in overtime to if you are somehow like almost losing a game in overtime to what was that quarterback's name? Tommy DeVito. You're an embarrassment. They have a lot of work to do outside of the quarterback position. Miami, they were thin. They're still thin. Mm-hmm. And now they're a little less talented than they were. They're hoping that they can
I'd say more than a little.
They're hoping they can raise the floor back up to at least where they started last season at. And they're still the draft, so there's things that can happen, but
when you talk about losing a guy like Wilkins, though, that's a big...
On top of a team that's not going to have Chubb.
I noticed Alf didn't really talk about that this week.
Yeah.
He kind of like glazed over losing Wilkins because that's a massive loss.
He buried the lead on this one.
I mean, you could make an argument that he's was the best player on their team last year.
Jalen Phillips was great.
Sure.
But then down the stretch, like it's that thing of like now you're going to start this season without a Jalen Phillips, probably, without a Bradley Chubb for sure. You don't have Andrew Van Ginkel. Mm-hmm. You have Shaq Barrett, who might
without Jerome Baker
be something. I don't know. I don't know what you have, but it can't be better than what you had last year because you might get back to the floor. Mm-hmm. The Bills are the team where it's like, okay, what we had is what we had, and even though we lost a bunch of pieces, like defensive tackle market hasn't moved.
Right.
So you're still and you retained the most important one, the guy that still has some pass rush acumen. Something we talked about in this week's free agency.
I think for the Dolphins, it's difficult to argue that you're going to be better when you're the one losing the guys making the 6-figure contracts and you're not the ones handing out the 6-figure contracts, right? Like that's a tough spin to try to put on something.
So barring anything glaring happening over the next 2-3 weeks, I mean, there's still a lot of time for the free agent market to develop.
Yeah, I mean, the free agent market just started, right? Like, there's not a lot of big names that have come off the market yet.
No.
Right? Like, Calvin Ridley just came off the market today. That was the big name. Wild overpayment for Tennessee.
Well, and that's what you're doing right now.
You've got what you have right now on the market is what you have every year. And I've used the analogy a couple times in the group chat is like you've got the 16-year-olds that just got their first paycheck. And they're out spending money. They're out at the mall spending money, right? Like the Bears have all this money to spend, so they're handing out stupid deals. Like Tennessee has a ton of money now that Derrick Henry's gone, so they decide to give $94 million of it to a 30-year-old Calvin Ridley. Like there's teams that are gonna, for all intents and purposes, blow their load early, right? Like Mike Tyson coming out and just throwing haymakers for the first round. But it's a 15-round fight.
Yeah.
That's where the Bills have excelled over the last 5-6 years in free agency is that 4th day, 5th day, these veterans, these 30-year-old Buda Bakers that are out there that are like, I really need a team. And Buffalo calls like at the right moment. It's like, hey, we got a deal. What do you think?
We've got a fit.
1 year, prove it.
We've got a fit. We've got an opportunity, and we've got some cash.
And by the way, we've got a head coach. All the problems I've had with McDermott, but that's a selling point when they go, oh, by the way, we've got a head coach that took two guys that were retreads and turned them into a dual All-Pro, Ring of Honor type players in Buffalo.
I'll never get over the fact that he saved Roman Harper's career. Roman Harper was sent away by the Saints when they thought he was washed when he hit his 30s. He came to Carolina, had a Pro Bowl season, and the next, after his 2-year deal was up, the Saints brought him back.
Yeah.
Because they were like, oh, we were wrong. You can be a starter again. I'm not worried when I look at our division. Now, the AFC as a whole, there's still a lot of work to be done in order to keep ourselves in that conversation of like, hey, these are guys who you can assume are going to be there in that divisional round championship game conversation.
But you're still the team being chased by everybody but one, right? So, you're still, and the one in front of you hasn't done anything but retain their own guy so far.
Which is the best dynamic in the world, because at least it's like, this is more of a Cold War now where we're just staring at each other across the trenches going, well, what are you going to do?
Yeah, exactly. Where are you going to go spend your money? Because you don't have a lot of it. So
I can't wait to see what the next week brings, and then the week after, and then we get into draft conversation. Like, there's going to be a lot of fun.
I've got a mock draft. You want to do a mock draft?
Oh, my God. I'd like to eat this can as much as I'd like to hear that mock draft. Guys, this has been a lot of fun, but we got to get out of here. I'm Drew Gear. That's Chris Kruger. That's Ryan Lasel. And this has been your AFC's Roundup.